James has been both a client as well as by now a good friend. We have shared some really nice meals also in our time. And the pleasure today of talking to James is because James actually started with two people. And by the end of the first year, if my numbers are correct, had 14 people, but then by now has grown his team over 4 years to about 130 people plus. And not just with one single role, but with a diverse type of role. So this is really exciting. And I think James is a great person to speak to and to ask him about the challenges he had during the time, and also ask him what was the thought process that he had at the beginning when he was ideating the concept of building a team remotely. And so we're going to do this as a conversation. I hope it's going to be very interesting for everybody to learn a little bit from James' experience. And obviously, it's going to be an open conversation. We do have some slides, but at the end of the day, the idea is that this will be a conversation and we will talk about different matters along the way. That being said, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do here is really provide you with some firsthand knowledge and James' knowledge at the end of the day about this, how this went about, how he went about this, what were the challenges from his side. So let me start directly and let me ask him the first question. So James, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure having you here. When you started thinking about this, so before you even reached out to anybody about building a remote team, but when you started thinking and considering the idea of scaling your team, and one of the ways of scaling the team, making it with a remote team, what were your hesitations? What were your biggest concern? What was the things you were really worried about?
So I think that, and thank you for having me, Nico. The biggest one was how to start. So at the time where we started looking into this process, I think we were all UK based. We're a COVID baby company, so we were fully remote, which I think helps a lot in this kind of process. I think if you're used to having everyone in the office, it's probably an order of magnitude more scary. We'd already got over that hump. But thinking, if we are going to do this, we have that kind of control to make the people that we hire through this feel like team members. Team members of Spotship, all technically legally employed by Penn Brothers. We've made very clear from day one, and I think Nico was probably one of the only people we talked to in the process who got this, that we want the people working full-time for Spotship to feel like Spotshippers first and Penn Brothers people second. I think later on we're going to talk a little bit about retention. And one of the things that is really freaky about Spotship is the retention. We have practically 0% voluntary turnover. And for me, that's something that I have tried to copy from the founder and CEO of Admiral Car Insurance, because one of the things is with people, while obviously it feels nice to have long-term retention and know people want to stay, actually financially, it is a huge driver of efficiency. When we talk about, I think it's more or less the same now for European team or Philippines team. I would say our onboarding process to productivity is somewhere in the 3 to 6 month range. And that means if we lose somebody in less than 3 to 6 months, they're essentially a pure cost with no value add. And that's something we wanted to really firmly avoid. And we had read that offshore staff, the traditional turnover, I think, is about 300 or 400% a year, which would mean if we ended up with that, that would have just been completely unmanageable. I think the other kind of big fear we had, which didn't materialize with Penn Brothers at all, but I think every single other outsourcer we spoke to did have that problem, was transparency. For me, Nico's been very nice to always be supportive of Spotship, but I want the vast majority of money we're paying to go to the people who are working for Spotship. I'm happy for Nico to make a bit of profit for the way he looks after us, which is exceptional. But I want to know that those people are being paid and are being looked after properly. And if you normally go about outsourcing, the owners of these firms, which I think tend to be, there's a big barbelling effect, either much larger or much smaller than Penn Brothers. They are anti-transparency. because they know if you can see what is margin and is what is going to the people, that will encourage you to negotiate aggressively on the margin. Whereas if you don't tell them, they can't really negotiate so much. And you can also play nasty negotiating tricks about saying, oh, you don't want our people to be on low wages. With Penn Brothers, we have that perfect transparency that we know what we're paying for what, and I can have the comfort that our folks out there are being properly looked after. And we also actually did, which I think there was a little bit of pushback from the time, which I think also shows how commercial Penn Brothers are. We decided to give everyone full comprehensive health insurance from day one. And I think, Nico, while I do consider you very nice, I'm not sure if it was you or one of your team members said, you can't do that. Nobody else does that. It seems crazy. But from a spot ship point of view, people in the UK have health insurance, and we think it should be exactly the same in the Philippines.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Actually, it's an interesting thing that you mentioned because that's something that it was holding true at the beginning when we started working together. Obviously, COVID has significantly changed that over time. So nowadays, everybody, no matter if it's rank and file, if it's seniority, if it's senior person, HMO, private health insurance that we now provide to everybody from the get-go has become a critical element. But yeah, first of
So
all,
it's now
thank you
it's now
for
standard for everyone.
it's now standard, correct?
Oh,
Yeah.
that's annoying. So we're
Yeah.
not going above and beyond anymore.
Not anymore. No, nowadays you need to go above and beyond by including their additional beneficiaries and so on and so forth. So, yeah, COVID changed that because COVID obviously scared a lot of people here in the Philippines and I guess worldwide. So, being without a health insurance is kind of like one of the worst case scenarios that you can imagine. But no, but before I continue, I mean, thank you for also the kind words you had about the transparency. It's something that we have always believed in since we started in 2014. I don't want to talk bad about others, but I do have come across scenarios where somebody says, "Oh yeah, it's $2,000, it's $3,000," but when you look behind it, you don't know what actually goes to the employee, what goes to the company providing the service. And I think it creates the wrong incentive because as a company, it can very quickly incentivize you to start reverse tendering, to start trying to push down the salaries as much as possible, so as to increase your margin. And I don't think that's why we do this in the first place and why you should be doing this in the first place. I mean, at the end of the day, we want to create also really interesting and creative jobs for Filipinos. No, I mean, thanks for that. By the way, for those who might have noticed, great timing. My power went away because I forgot that they're actually doing maintenance work to my to my electrical room in this facility in this building. I should have gone to the office and made it from there. So, since I only heard half of what you said, James, let me go to the next question. Um, so you said that obviously transparency was very important and a part that I didn't unfortunately hear, but then also you said at the very much at the beginning that the setting up remotely was quite of important. But one thing is to set up remotely when you were starting a team of 2 people, 4 people, 14 people by the end of the year. But another team is to have a remote team of 130 plus people. And I know it's not related to the question I have right here, but I guess it goes into the whole scaling. How did you look at it when you started scaling? Like, was there anything in particular besides the transparency, the HMO, and other things that you were worried about when you started scaling and making the team bigger and bigger?
So, I mean, this was a very, very low kind of thing on the ladder to getting there. But I think if you look at some of the smaller firms out there, you do worry that the whole thing might be a fraud. So, I
Mm.
mean, I came to you guys through, I was at NCED Business School, and actually the referral to you came from somebody who wasn't your client, but it was a stronger referral than that. And for that, it gave me from somebody I already trusted, it skipped about 20 levels on the trust game. It was like, okay, I know this is real. And I think, when we did it, part of the way Spotship does things is over the long term, we're trying to become a deca-billion-dollar company and solve data for shipping. Um, that's not going to happen in a year. So we are very long term in the way we do things. And,
Mhm.
I think it's stealing from Naval Ravikant, but we want to play long term games with long term people. So we've been with Penn Brothers now 3 years. I think it's very unlikely that we ever leave at any point. it's just too easy and works too well at this point, and we have a very, very good working relationship. But I think, it was that, could we get that retention and could we have a partner that was long term? And that was definitely Penn Brothers. I would still say at the start, we are not a company that likes placing massive bets into the unknown. When we started this process, we did need to find somebody quickly.
Mhm.
At the time, the core of the spotship services, we use primarily AI to scrape data out of emails about available ships and available cargoes, match those with a static database and make them searchable. Where we're different from other companies in the industry is we don't believe for at least the next 15 years AI will ever be able to do 99.99% accuracy without any human involvement. So our models are designed for about 10% to be done by humans and to need regular retraining to keep pushing that limit. And that necessitates a very well-trained, quite large human team. But we weren't going to hire, 100 people at once, even though at the time we started the process, we were in quite a rush. I don't know if you remember, Nico, when I was like, okay, we need people tomorrow. But it was actually my co-founder and my best salesperson were doing this kind of 24/7 on top of their jobs, the data labeling and the data entry backing up the models. And it was really something that was crippling the company. So we said, I think the original number, I think we said we'll start with six, of which we did two straight away, and the next four took a while. And at the time we did this, I thought it was probably the way forward. We'd considered other countries as well, but I think one of the things that stood out about the Philippines, it is cost-wise very competitive with the more populous offshore hubs, India, Vietnam, etc. But the standard of spoken English for me is substantially better. And Spotship is a company that, even though we're international, the language of shipping globally is English. So we said from day zero, everyone has to speak fluent English, and that's much easier in the Philippines. But, we were not wedded to it. We said, let's do six and see how it goes. And turned out it went very well. We definitely had teething problems with the scaling. So I think for the first few people, we didn't have a structured training regime. And the training regime we had was completely conducted out of London, by people who I would say were doing this on top of 10 to 15 other jobs. And what slowly happened is stratification of our resource in the Philippines. So I think and Nico, you can probably give a lot more color on this. One of the cultural differences I see between UK startup culture and traditional Philippines culture is a less flat structure seems to have advantages. A hierarchy seems to produce more efficiency and also more comfort and happiness. Like if I call up one of the folks in the UK that, I mean, sometimes a bit surprised, but expecting the call. If I call up a data analyst in the Philippines, they would worry about the world ending to a certain amount. So it's much more comfortable we structure it data analyst one, two, three, which are pay levels, and then we go to senior data analysts who are pod supervisors, so they manage a shift. And then we have the managers who basically are more involved with overall quality control, shift planning, and managing that pod of supervisors. And separately to that, we have, which has really brought the efficiency in terms of the hiring and scaling process, a dedicated training and boot camp team. So when people roll on, that no longer paralyzes my European resource completely. That goes to 2 to 3 dedicated people who their whole job is training and bringing on new people. So they actually know how to do that far better than the European team know how to do that. And that gave us a much better result in percentage of hires being successful hires. I would say it's very rare for us nowadays to have a hire that's not a successful hire. Nico did ask for warts and all. So we have had a handful of really bad hires. Really bad hires, for example, just not showing up on their first day, or at all for their first week with no comms. But I would say one of the things that I love about Penn Brothers is they're really good about dealing with that. So the solution that we have, which I think is the same as everyone, Penn Brothers are the legal employer and deal with essentially the nitty-gritty stuff outside of the career advancement stuff. So when we've had those kind of problems, that has always moved on to Penn Brothers books. I mean, it was a shock to us the first time it happened. I think Penn Brothers have efficient procedures for dealing with it, but it becomes, as a CEO running a small and agile team, if that happened in the UK on a full-time employee, it could well whack my productivity for 3 or 4 weeks. As it is working with Penn Brothers, we just say this person has never showed up. Can you please undo the hire,
Take care
basically?
of it. Yeah.
And it is, it sounds a little bit inhuman, but I would say our loyalty is to team members who have become proper team members. If you've never shown up to work, then that's a crazy demand to make the other side of the world on a CEO or chief operating officer. So that's one of the areas where I think Penn Brothers just remove that friction. And it would mean, I would actually say we're much less worried about the risk of bad hires. We still don't want to make bad hires, but actually, if Penn Brothers will interview before we do, then we'll interview. But it means we're quite relaxed in making the offers, knowing that if we've made a terrible mistake, which I think we've not made that many of, you've probably got better records than us. I think maybe 2 or 3
Two or
in
three,
4 years.
maybe. And that
Yeah.
was more at the beginning when you were scaling faster. Yeah. I think
So,
by
so I think
now,
our interview
yeah.
process has got a bit
Yeah.
more thorough as well. But it's just something that it's easier to hire more quickly, knowing you're not on the hook for those kind of risks.
No, absolutely. And I think you mentioned a couple of very interesting things. So let me start with the structure here in the Philippines. I thought that was a very interesting learning lesson that you had. That obviously a more flat structure that it's more common in Europe or in other organizations does not necessarily bring out the best when it comes to efficiencies here in the Philippines. That's partially a cultural thing. It's partially the way things are done here. But it's also partially the distance. I mean, I do recommend many times to our clients some sort of hierarchy, some sort of guidance, specifically at the beginning when you're onboarding new people and when they're learning how to work with you, and they're obviously learning how to work with somebody remotely, far away, different time zones. It helps. It might take a little bit more time at the beginning, but it helps. And I think the other thing you mentioned also, and it's interesting that you mentioned how you onboard your people, because we actually did learn from you and from other clients on the last 3 years. We have spent quite heavily and time intensely on building what is being presented here, which is that hypercare. So it's because obviously in our case as an EOR, we need to onboard the people ourselves. So all your employees or the talent that it's assigned to you, we onboard them as Penn Brothers. And we need to spend some time with them to explain to them how everything works, how things are. We even give them now some cultural training since about a year, how to work remotely, how to work with different cultures, and so on and so forth. And then there's also the onboarding from the client side, in this case, your onboarding. And when we put those two things together and we align them properly, I think that's where also things become much more successful, and it enables the person, the employee, to also hit the ground running. Now, if the person doesn't show up, like the 2, 3 cases you mentioned, doesn't even show up to the first onboarding, then yeah, I mean, honestly, I look at it and say, you voted with your feet, and I'm sorry, but you're not welcome anymore. It is what it is. But it's an interesting thing.
Just on that onboarding process,
Sure.
I would say, and the hierarchy you talked about, we we don't we still, I don't think, have hired anyone from you above our kind of entry grade. So all of our hierarchy has come from people we've promoted internally. So we
Yeah.
now have so we now have the data analyst ranks, the senior data analyst ranks. So I guess compared to banks and consultancies, that would be like analysts and sort of associates or junior managers. Then we have our manager rank, and then we have senior manager who we have one on. The lady who is senior manager was promoted from data analyst one to straight to manager. So skip like 6 years of progression. She was just absolutely exceptional and has made everything easier to do. And also, to a certain extent, has made our relationship with Penn Brothers closer because she is a Filipino voice on the ground who can explain how things are done in that culture more efficiently. And she's actually very close to executive level now at a spot ship, in the way spot ship does things. She's flying out to our Christmas supper this year in London. And she has been a game changer. But I would say for people who structure things like us, that idea of hiring people at entry level and seeing who excels. I mean, Chanel asked if she could come and pitch our exec team some improvements that she'd seen in process. And she just did that completely of her own initiative. And the things she'd found, I think, improved efficiency by maybe 40% of the things she just found in her first 2 months. And she had that boldness to come to us, but also that kind of commercial feel to work out how things were done. So I really like that way of doing things. I don't know how it would have worked if we looked to hire senior people from the get-go, but it works much better when you have them. But I'm an internal promote guy.
No, no, and I think there is a beauty to what you just said. I mean, it's not every. So you are not unique. There are other clients who do it similarly. Actually, our first client, which is actually my co-founder, he did the same. So he built teams internally and promote them. Only later on, I think by his third, fourth year, he also for specific roles he started looking
Yeah.
for people who had more experience or more yeah the background that was needed. But I think the beauty of what you said, and it's something that I'm makes me very happy, and it's part of the reason why we do what we do is really that opportunity. You know, you hire a junior person, you train that person, you upskill that person, and then within a what certain amount of time, suddenly that person, like your case, is a senior person, a person reporting directly to the executives, and there is a beauty to that because that's an opportunity working with a British AI maritime company that you would otherwise not have, and the exposure you wouldn't have it, the even people entrusting you to do it, you wouldn't necessarily have it if you would go to a traditional company. So I think that's something that we're very proud of, and actually honestly it makes my day hearing stories of that. And we have a few stories like that across various clients of ours, and it's something that I really believe in because, and this is a quick side note, part of why we wanted to do Penn Brothers when we started 2014 is also to do a little bit a small contribution to actually the brain drain, because one of the biggest challenges of the Philippines and many countries like the Philippines is really the brain drain. It's the people who have to leave the country to get this opportunity that you were just describing. But here we're enabling people to actually have that opportunity without leaving, and after COVID, many times without actually having to leave the countryside into one of the big cities, because it's another brain drain from the countryside into the big cities. So there is a beauty to that. But
I promise you,
changing,
we got Chanel a return flight. We're not stealing her from the Philippines.
don't worry,
Uh,
I will go and pick her up myself if
but
that's the
but
case.
I would say just another way of saying what you said is it's the opportunity to build a career. It's
Hmm.
not it's not like I can see we're being asked to move on, but for me this is very important. Like I am philosophically opposed to what I call contracting, like gig work, people doing one thing for a month, then another month, then a 2 month stint. I don't think you can really get good at anything or become a leader of an organization or live the kind of thing that I view as the most satisfying life that way. And for somebody like Chanel, she's almost certainly going to be on the XCOM soon. And to be, to rise up from somebody who entered data to somebody running a company,
It's
awesome.
exciting
And I think
and it's amazing.
it would gut me if she ever left. And I feel we've been able to give that experience, and we've got somebody who is world class that way. So it's everybody wins.
No, thank you for that, and it's really exciting to hear that. And we will always support you to do our best to retain her. So let me change topics because they're chasing us, both of us here in our chat. So as a founder, when you set this up, and obviously now with 130 plus people, I mean compliance is obviously very important. And one of the things you do besides having the team is obviously also the data that it's part of it. So what was your thought about it? How did you make yourself feel comfortable with the whole idea of having a remote team, giving the compliance side of the whole equation of building a remote team?
I did not give too much thought to it, I've got to say.
Great.
Like you guys came highly recommended by, an exec level person at NCAD. You seem to be a serious operation. The disclosures you gave us about what everyone was earning and how much tax you were paying on their behalf. Look, if you have been keeping all the tax that you're meant to pay to the Philippines, that's going to be news to me, and we'll view it as not an us problem.
No, no, absolutely. And it shouldn't be your problem. And it should be something that any company who provides our service does correctly.
But
Because
I
otherwise,
really I can see how for let's say you're a FTSE 100 company considering an outsourcing program, you should get stuck into this stuff. I would really suggest, so long as you've checked that you're paying people a living wage, that's very easy to do via Penn Brothers. I would suggest not overly worrying about this kind of stuff because 99.5% of startups don't make it. If you're having founder level people worrying for more than an hour about compliance when you're working with a respected employer of record, you're probably not spending your time on the right stuff.
that's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, we see it's actually
Sorry, I'm a
interesting.
distinct flavor.
No, I know, and that's why we have you here. I mean, it's always very how do you call this? Refreshing when you put things in perspective. And you're right. I mean, I guess from our perspective, though, that being said, because I had built teams already in the Philippines from my previous employer, which was a Japanese company with a Filipino joint venture, I think the way we approached it, I approached actually when I set up Penn Brothers was exactly that, but from the other side. So my approach and what we wanted to build from the get-go was a company that was compliant from day one and was doing things correctly. Because you can imagine when I was working for the Japanese, they worry about compliance day
Oh yeah.
in, day out. That's one of the most important things always. And so when we did this, the goal was, okay, how can we be the HR business partner, the compliance partner in the Philippines, so as to enable a company like yours not to have to worry about it and not to have to double check everything and not to have to be in London or wherever and be like, I wonder if things are done correctly. It was exactly that idea. So when we built it, it was my mindset was like, well, I will build it the same way I had built any of the other companies for the Japanese, which was really compliance comes first and everything else follows from there so that our clients can rest comfortably and focus on their thing. And that's been part of the idea, like we will take care of all the annoying part here in the Philippines and you can focus on what you're doing and what you want to drive, which is your product, your growth, your scale, and your thing. So yeah, and it's something that we really looked at. You mentioned actually a couple of minutes ago retention, and obviously I believe the retention you have is quite high. I think it's 86%, 84%, something like
Yeah.
that. 87%. There we go. My team did the research. Um, how do you? So I guess obviously the training you do to the team is part of how you enable retention. But there's I guess from you from a startup perspective, from a young company perspective, there must be other things that you think about when it comes to retention, other things you do. What are your thoughts about this?
Absolutely. So I think it is probably culture plus career opportunity is the big
Mm,
thing. And I think, Chanel is the shining example, but also our 12 supervisors are great examples, and our two other managers, including Wilfred, who's I think our very first hire, who came in as a data analyst one and is now one of the managers. Um, I think there aren't that many people, and I know it's something you're trying to change, that offer remote workers in the Philippines the opportunity to have a full career, to
mhm,
go up the ladder to a very senior level. And I think the fact that our crew can see that, and the proof is in the pudding, means the opportunity is there if they excel, which moves this from something that can look a little bit like at worst that what's that show called Severance, where people are entering data and they don't know what it's for. We try to be the opposite of that. That it's very transparent how you can progress through the organization. It's also brought home what this stuff is. So the training is very thorough. We don't say enter this data. We say these are available ships in available ports. These are cargoes traded on the market. And we try and be very clear with the why of everything we're doing. On the cultural side, it's, I think, the integration that's very different. So the
mhm.
Philippines team attends our all hands every week. The timing of the all hands is chosen so it fits Philippine time as well as London time. I mean, it's not a perfect time for anyone. It's 11:45 on a Friday, but it means that people can all log in. Lots of people log in from their phones. And that means on that all hands, we say every single commercial win that's happened to the company, every commercial loss, how marketing's going, how the operations team in the Philippines are performing, and how tech's performing. And I think that gives a feeling that everyone is part of a company because they are part of a company. And I think
Yep.
that's very different from the uncaring and dismissive way some people treat their contract employees. So I think that's a very, very important aspect of it. I think the health insurance used to be a differentiator. I think the work from home aspect, and we try and also be very easy with things like shift swapping. That has got easier since the strata came in place because my co-founder and I trying to deal with 130 people shifts doesn't really work very well. It worked when there were 12 people, now not so much. But there's also this integration in terms of one-to-ones. So the Philippines team is mainly my co-founder Henry's team. Henry will have one-to-ones with, I think, the top 25 people every 2 weeks and the whole team every month or so. So it really is just we treat the team in the Philippines the same as the European team. And I think that has created something that is quite satisfying. You pair that with career opportunities, it's a good place to.
I can see that. And actually, when we look at the statistics across the organization, I mean, we have currently about 105 clients, active clients, and you can really see that. I mean, our overall retention is relatively high because we don't work with people who really come here and say like, "Hey, I want the minimum wage, low cost, and all kinds of things," because that's not really what we cater to and what we want to cater to. That being said, if we look at the data, you can really see that people in organizations who treat them like a member of their team, who engage them in their communication, in the explanation how things are in their what do you call this like um oh, I'm blanking on the word right now. Like, wow, when you put everybody in the in
Team.
on in the same, yes, exactly, on the team. So that makes a big difference. And then we have also, from our end, added to it. How can we also contribute to that retention component by, for example, I mean, I'm not sure. I think some of your team members actually joined that this year. So we did a basketball and volleyball tournament. We
Yes,
do different
I think they came
activities.
second overall.
I think so, actually. Yeah, yeah. It's somehow, and actually, it was funny because we watched it, and so the final game was of the basketball tournament. We also had the volleyball tournament. Was really interesting. It went to second overtime. People were so tired that they didn't even move anymore. They just started throwing the ball at each other and somehow moving it forward and trying to score. It was funny. Anyway, but yeah, I agree. I mean, that engagement, doing things for them, or what you're doing, flying actually your most senior people over to London to participate in your Christmas supper. That makes a huge difference, and it really changes the whole perception that they have. Actually, so James, question. You mentioned a while ago why, because you are in an AI company, or you use AI the for the brokerage side of the maritime sector. But you mentioned at the beginning that you feel AI will never be 99 or will not be over the next 10, 15 years 99.9%. You need humans to be there. So what's your take on AI? Actually, like being an AI company and a company that delivers what you do through AI. What is your take actually on AI itself and how
I
AI is
think
going to impact companies and the
AI is
workforce?
for me fundamentally a force multiplier. It
Mm,
can enable people to do a lot more with their time. And if I look at what our folks in the Philippines do, they're essentially doing the jobs of junior to mid-level shipbrokers. But we're able to do with a team of 130, we're serving customers who essentially are using us instead of maybe 4 or 5 thousand people. So you've got
mm.
that 50 times leverage on time is what the Spotship AI is doing there. And it really is a philosophical position we've taken against our competitors. So it means our overall accuracy delivered is 99.7. Zero North, who are number two, are 80%. Signal Ocean, the Greeks, are 67%. So they've tried to get AI to do everything, and it doesn't work without
Yeah.
95% accuracy. These tools aren't commercial. So I believe hugely on what AI can deliver, but there's a limit. AI is
Mhm.
enhancing what humans can do. You can't take humans out of the loop completely on everything. And I mean, it's the same when I look at our software engineering side. We use now AI code checkers on everything, but in terms of getting AI to write code, we have one engineer who can do it spectacularly and really productively. He has, I think, 22, 23 years experience, was a top ICL grad. With AI, he can perform the work of about 30 engineers. But other people in the team trying to do it the same way, we actually find the code that they produce is unacceptably poor quality. So I think, AI is not this magic bullet that anybody can use it and it will revolutionize your life. If you're really good, AI can scale what you can do. If as a company you've got a good basis, AI can really make you a lot faster. And that's what we do for the shipping industry. But that depends on us having people of a very high quality that to a certain
Yep.
extent, you even think about model training. If our team in the Philippines was rubbish and careless, we'd have trained our models wrong in the first place. So even if we
Yep.
did get to 100% covered by the AI, if it had been trained by weak people, that would have been a useless model in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like what you said. And it's interesting that you mentioned that because I was talking to somebody, I think yesterday, and they are trying to build a team because or rebuild a team because they decided to go the full AI route with their outreach and their outbound setup and realized after 6 months that it's not working and it was giving them nothing. And so they're like, well, I guess we need to rebuild the team and use AI as a force multiplier, but have people actually, be part of it. And I think so that it's something we see very similar. But I do believe that enabling, so one of the things we're starting to do now here in the Philippines is enabling all our employees, regardless if it's to which client they go, with a basic training of how to use AI in their day-to-day work. This is something we're implementing now because it is a force multiplier. And if you have people already know at least the basics of how to use Gemini or ChatGPT and how to prompt it, that will already give them a much better like starting point compared to a lot of other people. But yeah, you need both. You need to combine both the human and the AI. So it's
I
a
think
really
familiarity is great, and it's also
yeah.
one of my favorite CEOs in shipping, who's a New York Stock Exchange listed ship owner called Ardmore. I think they gave everyone a day and a half recently just to play with AI in every function. And I think familiarity is great. And I think the tools that are out there in public, things like ChatGPT, Claude, etc., can be good for things. But I would also say I have had some moments of utter anger when I have received ChatGPT generated crap copy from my salespeople who are meant to be highly trained. This is in Europe, not the Philippines. So I think one of the important things for AI is like use it, sure, like it really can speed things up, but you are still responsible for the content coming out of you, even if you've had AI use it. Like I don't care if it's crap because ChatGPT was crap at that. If I've asked somebody to do something, the responsibility remains with them.
Specifically for the younger people, for those who haven't yet that experience, because for them it's very difficult to understand whatever AI is giving them, if it's actually correct or wrong, or if it makes sense or not, because they
I,
haven't had the exposure. Yeah.
I think it's going to create huge management problems. And I
Yeah.
actually think it's something that management teams need to be pretty firm on. Like ChatGPT said, this is not an excuse and can never be an excuse.
It shouldn't be. I mean, the mistakes which can happen there are huge. I mean, it's like that case already a year ago, I think, about that lawyer who submitted ChatGPT things to the judge and was disbarred afterwards for doing that because he was claiming some case law that didn't even exist. Anyway, so I think we're getting to a little bit to the end. So yeah, let me just read it out there. So looking back, if you look back at your experience now over 3 years building a team here in the Philippines, if you would do this again, or if you would talk to any other founder or top manager leader, what would you say? What would you tell them about making that decision to build a remote team? Like, what would be your best advice or your first advice?
So I would go earlier than we went, and I would go earlier and go smaller. So I
Mm,
think however much you read about it before, there is going to be a learning curve of interfacing with a team like that. And the longer you have to build it, the kind of initial core of a team, the better it'll be. So I would actually, I think, we did 6 people within the first 3 weeks. I think if we could have done two people 2 months before that, it would have been a smoother scaling process. So I would start small and start maybe 3 to 4 months before you think you actually need it. And that investment is financially very small, but gives you the opportunity to make a much better decision and potentially use those people as the kind of beachhead to build out the team better.
Yeah, no, I can see that. And it ties a little bit in also what we always recommend is like start with a lower hanging fruits, meaning to say with also roles that are easier to specifically define and set the team up than remotely. And then you can go into the more creative stuff or the more complicated things. Yeah. So from our end, I mean it's being shown right now here. I mean, we really try to understand better in the initial calls the first time we talk to somebody and they come with the idea about what is it they really need, what is it they're really looking for, and then try to support them as good as possible with that and also guide them. I mean, I think from our end, the guidance is very important because we have done it. We have done it over 200 times. We have currently 105 active clients. And there is a lot of experience also in telling people what works better and what doesn't work better. And what you said is completely true. I mean, if people come to us and say like, "Hey, I need 20 people in 2 weeks or in a month," it's like, yes, okay, but you need to figure out how you're going to onboard that, how you're actually going to make it work. Whereas if you maybe go with 2, 3 people, and then once you have that in place, you add another 5, 10, it simplifies your life and it makes it easier on both sides, not just on your side, but also on our side, because we're obviously trying to also deliver. So it's a
Oh,
very
but you've
interesting.
still
Thank you
you've
for that.
still been able to find us at times 20 people within a week and a half. I think we've done that a couple of times.
Yeah, finding is not
I
the
mean, I,
problem.
I agree
It's
with you that it's better not to, but it's still
yeah,
if somebody ends up in a situation where they need your help immediately, I hope I'm not making your life too difficult, but you guys can do that. You've showed us you can.
yeah, we can, and we have done
I
it.
know
I mean,
you'd
actually,
rather
the
you'd rather not, but it's possible. I
yeah,
agree it's suboptimal, but the world of startups, things can just move so quickly. Like you can
yeah,
sign a
we
contract when you're small that 10x is or 100x is your size and starts in 2 weeks' time. And like that sort
like
of thing, you need to
I
scramble.
I agree. I agree. We had a case in, I think it was 2001, 2002, maybe, where a client came to us and said, like, listen, for the next 3 months, I need to hire 80 people every month. And we were like, okay, well, let's do that. The challenge was obviously hiring was not easy on that volume, but the challenge wasn't actually the hiring. The challenge was on the onboarding side, on
Yeah.
really not on our end and on the client's end, because that's a lot of people to take in and to set up and to make successful. And you don't want to waste it. And you also don't want to frustrate them because imagine you're there and the first week you don't know what you're doing. That's frustrating. That's something that takes time to recuperate from a frustration level for both sides, for the client side, for the employee side. So it's a really interesting thing. Yeah, no, perfect. Thank you for that. I mean, I guess this covers pretty much everything we wanted to talk about. I think now we're going to open it up to. I mean, yeah. So okay, great. Thanks, guys. There's some key takeaways. So I mean, offshoring, as James said, is not really risky, and if you think it through and you do it well, it can actually be like AI, a force multiplier. I really believe that, and James' team really shows that. So the combination of the team and AI really makes it very powerful if you have the right partner. And I'm not saying it has to be us. There are other companies who also do a great job. But if you do have the right partner with the right transparency, with the right systems in place, then that will also be something that, trust me, will be very important and you will appreciate in the future. And then obviously the culture, both the culture that we provide as the local partner, but also the culture that you build as the client and that James built. I think that's super important also to make that stickiness, that retention, and build that team that you really want to build, and then promote people and build up the team, the people. That's really really powerful. Yeah. So I think we have some questions. Let's go to the questions. Okay. Um, what was the first question? Where is the question? There is the question. Oh no, people are still asking questions. What was the main concern? Actually, I'm actually asking my team. What was the main concern which came up in the Slido page? Maybe you can put it here and we can go over this a little bit. Losing control of quality or culture. Wow, 100%. Was there only one answer? Okay. Well, I think we covered that to a degree. It's really about making sure that you have the right partner, but making sure also that you onboard the people and work with them and drive it. But James, what do you think about this? I mean, I
Yeah,
think you already covered that to a
so
degree.
on this one, look, we have had accuracy problems with our human element from time to time. And one of the things that we ended up setting up with you that we didn't want to set up with you, not because we don't think Penn Brothers are great, but because we wanted to have separation of the people who did and the people who watched. We
Hmm.
set up a QA team with you. We looked for someone else that we could set up a QA team with, and we didn't find anyone I was happy to work with. So we ended up setting that up with Penn Brothers as well. And I think having a QA team for data entry is, as you pass a certain scale, it's just a must, and giving that team the tools it needs. So we actually have now the our data entry interface is 100% proprietary. And that enables the QA team. There's a separate QA interface, and then that all generates statistics that the managers interpret and that I talk about with Henry and the managers of the data team. That essentially allows us to work out what's going on. Are there common issues? Can we then put people into training? But I think for large scale data entry, without a QA process and without a scoring process, you will lose control of quality. And that was something that we had to I think we only brought it in after we had problems on the client side, but it now seems to be working very, very well. I think we're a year and a half into that.
Yeah, but I think no, thank you for that, James. Let me try to phrase this differently and tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it sounds also a little bit like one of the things to make it successful is yes, you have a plan and you execute on it, but you also you need to keep a certain degree of flexibility and adjustment as you build the team. Like in your case, building the QA team to make sure that the quality and the data quality was there. So it's that, I guess, you have that vision, you execute on the vision, but at the same time, you need to be nimble enough to also adjust certain things and restructure or add to it if needed. Is would that encapsulate a little bit what you just said?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think with the data entry specifically, I think is as simple as having working QA and monitoring. Because I think, we have a lot of people who are spectacularly dedicated, very careful, and we've trained them really well. And we have a subset of people who I think there's very few of them now, if any, who are either not so committed, the training hasn't worked well for them, or they're not that able. And I think without a QA function, you can't work out who that is or why
Who
things
that
are
is?
going
Yeah,
wrong. And I
yeah,
think for us now, our training team and our QA team that's their full-time jobs. They're not really doing data entry anymore, and we know we have to have that. And
yeah.
that's something I wouldn't worry about, particularly if you're in that state where you've just signed your first 10x client and you need to deliver it in 2 weeks. But if you're wanting to retain that client on a 10-year view, after 3 to 4 months when things settle down, you need to start putting those risk functions in.
Yeah, yeah, no, understood. No, perfect. So we have one other question here. So, and I can take that one. So, how do companies ensure data information security when hiring offshore teams? That's an interesting one. I mean, we have seen many different ways. It always comes down to finding out what is it that the company would do or is doing in their own backyard. So, because nowadays we have our own setups at any company has it, like you have your own security protocols, your own data management protocols, and so when we here in the Philippines, and that can also be in other places, we replicate that. So we set up the systems here for the offshore teams in the Philippines exactly the same way with our own IT team, together with your IT team, that it mimics and replicates it one to one, so that any data security that you require is the same data security that we set up here. Then, of course, we have also some clients, specifically when they work with like more confidential data or banking data, where they then require like an enclosed room with additional CCTV. They cannot take in their phones and things like that. But that's the minority. Usually, everything it can be done standard, like that we set it up and it works perfectly. So I mean, happy to explain if anybody here who's watching or going to watch has any questions about this or anything else, we can always answer those. There are solutions. Remote is being done a lot. You just heard James, he has over 130 people remote. So it's not rocket science and it can be done. And a lot of companies do it. So it's really exciting. James, thank you so much for your time. Hope it didn't take too much time of your day. I know you're busy. And yeah, I hope to see you soon again, face to face.
Nico, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I hope this was useful, everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Thanks everybody for being here.
Bye bye.